Stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. The voice was raw, venomous, and it came from the end of the aisle. Michael's head turned, his instincts kicking in before his thoughts could catch up. There, under the harsh glow of the overhead lights, stood a burly man in a worn leather jacket, his face flushed with rage. He loomed over a 3-year-old girl, her pigtails trembling as she clutched a stuffed bunny to her chest, its floppy ears dangling. Her sobs were soft, choked, but her wide brown eyes screamed fear. The man's hand rose, poised to strike, and the air in the aisle seemed to freeze. Shoppers paused, their carts stalling, their eyes darting to the floor or the shelves, avoiding the scene. Michael's pulse stayed even, a trick he'd learned in SEAL training, but his grip on the cart tightened, the plastic handle creaking under his fingers. He stepped forward, his sneakers silent on the linoleum floor, and his voice cut through the tension, low and firm. "Hey, that's enough." The man spun, his bloodshot eyes narrowing, his lips curling into a sneer. "Mind your own business, hero," he spat, his voice dripping with disdain. The name tag on his jacket read Daryl, assistant manager, the letters faded but legible. The girl's sobs quieted, her eyes locking onto Michael's, a flicker of hope in her tear-streaked face. Around them the store seemed to hold its breath. A cashier, a young woman with trembling hands, hovered near a phone at the checkout, her fingers twitching but not dialing. An older couple in the next aisle whispered, their words barely audible, "That poor girl." Michael's gaze flicked to a security camera above, its red light blinking. He knew this wasn't just a moment, it was a spark that could ignite the whole town. Daryl took a step closer, his boots scuffing the floor, his voice louder now. "You think you're tough? Get lost." But Michael didn't flinch. His hand slipped into his pocket, pulling out his phone, his thumb already typing a message to a group he hadn't called on in years. The girl's bunny slipped from her arms, hitting the floor with a soft thud. What happened next would shake Chesapeake to its core. Act 2, the response and rising tension. Michael stood his ground, his 6-foot frame a quiet wall of strength, his SEAL training keeping his emotions locked down. "I said back off," he repeated, his voice like steel wrapped in velvet, each word deliberate, carrying the weight of a man who didn't need to shout to be heard. Daryl scoffed, his leather jacket creaking as he stepped closer, his bulk dwarfing the trembling girl. "She's my kid. I do what I want," he snarled, his breath sour with stale coffee and something sharper, whiskey maybe. The girl shrank against a shelf of brightly colored cereal boxes, her tiny hands clutching the edge as if it could protect her. The crowd of shoppers grew, their carts forming a loose semicircle, but no one stepped forward. The cashier, barely out of her teens, glanced at the phone again, her fingers hovering, her face pale. Michael's eyes flicked to the girl, then back to Daryl, then to the camera overhead. He knew he had to act fast but smart. His phone buzzed in his hand, a single vibration confirming his message had gone through. "Need you at Harper's Grocery. Now, bring what you've got." Daryl's voice grew louder, his words a taunt as he leaned toward Michael. "What, you gonna play Superman? Save the day?" He laughed, a harsh, grating sound that made the girl flinch. "You don't know who you're messing with." Michael's jaw tightened, but he didn't rise to the bait. He knelt slightly, meeting the girl's eyes, his voice softening for her alone. "You're okay, sweetheart. I'm here." She nodded faintly, her tears slowing, her grip on the shelf loosening. A middle-aged woman in a floral dress, pushing a cart nearby, leaned toward her husband, her voice low but urgent. "That's the 3rd time this week I've seen him yell at her. Last Tuesday he dragged her out of the park screaming." Her husband nodded, his face grim. "Someone needs to do something." Michael caught their words, his mind racing. This wasn't a one-off. Daryl had a pattern and the town knew it. The stakes weren't just the girl's safety, they were the community's silence, its failure to act. Daryl grabbed the girl's arm, yanking her toward the aisle's end, his boots stomping as he muttered, "We're done here." The crowd parted, their murmurs growing, but Michael followed, his steps measured, his phone now recording. "You don't get to scare her," he said, his voice carrying to the onlookers. "Not today." Daryl spun, his face a mask of fury, but before he could respond, sirens wailed faintly outside, their sound growing closer. Someone had called the police, but Michael's gut told him they wouldn't be enough. As Daryl dragged the girl toward the store's exit, Michael's phone buzzed again. His allies were close. The parking lot was about to become a battlefield, not of fists but of truth. Act 3, Allies Assemble and Planning. By 3:45 p.m., the humid air outside Harper's Grocery shimmered with heat, the asphalt parking lot radiating warmth under a cloudless sky. Michael stood near the store's entrance, his eyes on Daryl, who dragged the girl to a beat-up pickup truck parked crookedly across two spaces. The girl clung to her bunny, now retrieved from the floor, her tiny body pressed against the truck's door. Daryl was shouting into his phone, his voice hoarse, unaware of the growing crowd filming him with their phones. Three figures approached from different corners of the lot, their movements purposeful, their faces familiar to Michael. First was Lena, a wiry ex-Marine with a buzz cut and a quick, confident smile, her camera drone already humming overhead, its lens trained on Daryl. She'd served with Michael years ago, her sharpshooting skills matched only by her knack for tech. Next came Marcus, a broad-shouldered lawyer with a graying beard, his suit jacket slung over one arm, a notebook of Virginia statutes in hand. He'd been Michael's sparring partner in their boxing days, his mind as sharp as his left hook. Last was Jamal, a tech-savvy neighbor who coached with Michael, his laptop tucked under his arm, his glasses reflecting the sun as he tapped into the store's public Wi-Fi. "You called, Coach?" Lena said, her eyes flicking to Daryl, her drone adjusting its angle. Michael nodded, his voice low. "We're not letting him hurt her." The group gathered near a weathered picnic table outside the store, its wood splintered from years of sun and rain. The air smelled of hot asphalt and grilled hot dogs from a nearby food truck. The cicadas hum a constant backdrop. Marcus opened his notebook, his voice steady. "Virginia Code 63.2 to 100. Child endangerment's a felony if we can prove a pattern. We've got witnesses, footage, and that camera in the store." Jamal's fingers flew over his laptop, pulling up a live stream platform. "I'm live now," he said, his screen showing a feed of Daryl pacing by his truck. "Already got 200 viewers. People are pissed." Lena adjusted her drone's controls, the device buzzing higher for a wider shot. "CPS is on my speed dial," she said. "One call and they're here." Michael glanced at the girl, her eyes still on him, her bunny clutched tight. "We do this calm, legal, and public," he said, his voice a quiet command. "No fists. Just truth." The allies shared a look, their bond forged in moments like this. Lena from their SEAL days, Marcus from late-night strategy sessions, Jamal from coaching kids through tough losses. They teased Michael lightly, Lena smirking. "Still gotta be the hero, huh?" But their deference to his leadership was clear. Marcus outlined the plan: confront Daryl publicly, use the crowd and live stream to pressure him, and get the girl to safety with CPS. Jamal would amplify the footage online, Lena would record every angle, and Marcus would cite the law to keep the police in check. As they finalized their approach, a police cruiser rolled into the lot, its lights flashing but its officers moving slowly, their faces familiar, locals who knew Daryl. Michael's eyes narrowed. "They're hesitating. That's our cue." Act 4, the confrontation. The confrontation unfolded outside the store's glass doors, the crowd now spilling into the parking lot, their phones raised like a sea of lenses. The sun beat down, casting sharp shadows, the air thick with the scent of exhaust and tension. Michael stood at the center, his navy t-shirt damp with sweat, his voice steady as he faced Daryl, who still gripped the girl's arm, his knuckles white. "Let her go, Daryl," Michael said, his words carrying across the lot. "Everyone's watching." Daryl laughed, but his eyes darted to the crowd, then to Lena's drone, its red light blinking as it hovered. "You think you're some hero?" he snapped, his voice cracking. "She's mine. You got no say." Marcus stepped forward, his notebook open, his voice calm but cutting. "Virginia Code 18.2 to 370. Endangering a minor on camera is a felony. Want to explain that to a judge?" The crowd murmured, their phones capturing every word, their voices rising. "Let her go. She's just a kid." Jamal's laptop pinged, the live stream now at 1,000 viewers, comments flooding in. "Protect that girl. This guy's a monster." Lena's drone swooped closer, its lens catching Daryl's flushed face. A woman in the crowd, the one in the floral dress from earlier, stepped forward, her voice shaking but loud. "He's done this before. Last week he screamed at her in the park till she cried. I should have said something then." Another shopper, an older man with a cane, nodded. "Saw him at the gas station too. Yelling at her over a spilled drink." The police officers, two men in pressed uniforms, approached slowly, their hands on their belts, their faces unreadable. Michael caught their hesitation. Daryl was a local, a regular at their barbecues. He stepped closer to Daryl, not touching him, his voice low but unyielding. "You don't get to hurt her. Not today. Not ever." The girl's eyes found Michael's again, her fear easing as the crowd's anger grew. A teenage boy in the crowd shouted, "You're done, man. and others joined in, their voices a rising tide. Daryl's bravado cracked, his grip on the girl loosening as he snapped, "She's fine. You're all crazy." But the crowd wasn't buying it. The woman in the floral dress, Sarah, knelt beside the girl, whispering, "Come here, sweetie." The girl slipped free, running to Sarah, who hugged her tightly, shielding her from Daryl. He lunged to grab her back, but Michael stepped into his path, his frame a quiet barrier. "You're done," Michael said, his voice a low thunder that silenced the lot. The officers finally moved in, their faces grim, pressured by the crowd and the live stream's growing reach. They cuffed Daryl as he stammered, "This is my kid. You can't do this." But the crowd's cheers drowned him out. Lena's drone captured it all. Jamal's screen showed 2,000 viewers, and Marcus was already on the phone with CPS. The girl clung to Sarah, her bunny pressed to her chest, her sobs fading. Michael's focus stayed on her, but he knew the fight wasn't over. The real battle was making sure this never happened again. Act 5. Resolution and Impact. By 5:02 p.m., the parking lot had calmed, the crowd thinning as the police cruiser pulled away with Daryl in the back, his shouts muffled. The sun dipped low, painting the sky orange, the air cooling as the cicadas' hum grew louder. Michael knelt beside the girl, now sitting on the picnic table with Sarah, her bunny back in her arms. "You're safe now," he said, his voice soft, his eyes meeting hers. She hugged the bunny tighter, whispering, "Thank you, mister." Sarah, tears in her eyes, explained she was a neighbor who'd seen Daryl's abuse before but felt powerless. "You gave us a voice," she told Michael, her hand on the girl's shoulder. Marcus hung up with CPS, confirming they'd placed the girl with her aunt while investigating Daryl. "We've got enough evidence for a solid case," he said, tucking his notebook away. Jamal's live stream, now viral with 5,000 views, had sparked a flood of comments and stories online. Other parents, neighbors, even store employees sharing tales of Daryl's temper. The store manager, a nervous man in a tie, approached Michael, promising to fire Daryl and cooperate with authorities. "I didn't know it was this bad," he admitted, his face pale. The allies gathered around the picnic table, their faces tired but resolute. Lena powered down her drone, smirking. "Still gotta be the hero, huh?" Michael shook his head, a faint smile breaking through. "Not me. All of us." The crowd, now dispersing, clapped as they passed, some calling out, "Thank you." A teenage girl posted a clip of the confrontation on social media, tagging it #Chesapeake Stands Up. By evening, local news vans arrived, their cameras rolling as reporters interviewed Sarah and other witnesses. At home, Michael sat with his own kids, their laughter filling the living room as they recounted their soccer practice. He thought of the girl, safe now, and the community that had finally spoken up. The news ran the story at 10 p.m., local coach stops child abuse in viral confrontation. Neighbors organized a meeting at the community center to discuss child safety, their voices no longer silenced by fear. The girl's aunt, a quiet woman with kind eyes, sent Michael a message, "She's smiling again. Thank you." The screen faded to text, "Real strength doesn't raise a fist, it raises a community. Will you stand up when it counts?" A final call appeared, "Subscribe for more stories of quiet courage."